Hello, good evening and welcome to a new episode of Arguably the Reading Quest. So in this video, I'll try to explain you the various genres of literature. So as you know, it is divided into two parts, fiction and non-fiction. So in non-fiction, we have essays and autobiographies. In fiction, we have novels, we have poems, we have drama, we have short stories, we have epistolary novels, we have lyric, we have odes, we have parables, we have fables, and we have folk tales or folklore. So before that, when we say various genres of literature, let's understand first what is literature. Please watch this video till the end. This is slightly technical, and I'll try to introduce you to the technical definition, I assume, because all of these words are very well known and we understand it in very many ways. There's total huge range of context in which these words are used. But I'll try to provide you a technical angle to it. So what do we mean by literature? It comes from the Latin root, which means writings. So literature has been commonly used since the 18th century, equivalent to the French belles lettres, which means fine letters, to designate fictional and imaginative writings, for example, poetry, prose fiction, and drama. In an expanded use, it designates also any other writing, for example, philosophy, history, even scientific works addressed to general audience, that are specially distinguished in form, expression, and emotional power. It is in this larger sense of the term that we call literary the philosophical writings of Plato, William James, the historical writings of Edward Gibbon, the scientific essays of Thomas Huxley, the philosophical and mathematical essays of Bertrand Russell, the psychoanalytic lectures of Sigmund Freud. Okay, all these are included in some or the other courses of literature, and they are called literature. Confusingly, however, literature is sometimes also applied in a sense close to its Latin original, which means to all the written work. Literature also can sometimes mean to all the written work, whatever their kind or quality. And this all-inclusive use is especially frequent with reference to the sum of work that deals with a particular subject matter. For example, I can say, all the literature concerning the use of cow manure as fertilizer. Let's say, for instance, we are talking in context of some college of agriculture. All the literature concerning the use of let's say, antibiotic in cancer patients. All the medical literature concerning the use of, let's say, psychiatric drugs in old age senile patients. So, this is what we mean by literature. But primarily, it is distinguished in form, expression, and its emotive power. Now, what is fiction? I hope we have known fiction, but let me introduce you. So, in an inclusive sense, fiction is any literary narrative, whether in prose or verse, which is invented instead of being an account of an event that actually happened. So, in a narrower sense, however, fiction denotes only narrative that are written in prose, which means the novel and short fiction. जब भी fiction की हम बात करते हैं तो narrower sense में fiction, by fiction we interchangeably means either novels or short stories. And it is very simply used as a synonym for novel. So literary prose narrative in which fiction is to be a prominent degree based on biographical, historical or contemporary fact are referred to by a compound name such as fictional biography or the historical novels. Okay. So that is what fiction is about. Now, let me introduce you to the term lyric. What do you mean by lyric? Lyric is any fairly short poem uttered by a single speaker who expresses a state of mind or a process of perception, thought and feeling. Lyric. As you can see my computer screen, lyric. So many lyric speakers are represented as musings in solitude. For example, in dramatic lyrics, however, the lyric speaker is represented as addressing another person in a specific situation. For example, John Donne's poem, Canonization, and William Wordsworth, Tintern Abbey. So although the lyrics is uttered in first person, the I in the poem need not necessarily be identified with the poet who wrote it. So there's a distinction. Now let's understand what is a novel when we say novel, right? What do we understand by novel? So the term novel is now applied to a great variety of writings that have in common only the attribute of being extended work of fiction written in prose. Extended work of fiction written in prose. As an extended narrative, the novel is distinguished from the short story and from the work of a middle length called novelette. Its magnitude permit a greater degree of character. Of course, characterization is very deep, very profound. Greater complexity of plot is there. Ampler development of milieu is there. More sustained exploration of character and motives than do the shorter and more concentrated mode can offer you. So as a narrative written in prose, the novel is distinguished from the long narrative in verse. For example, Chaucer's, Edmund Spenser and John Milton, which beginning with the 18th century, the novel has increasingly supplanted. For example, when we talk of the work of Dickens, when we talk of the work of Thomas Hardy or George Eliot, we can employ the words like the world of Dickens, the world of Thomas Hardy, so much so that you can feel that, they have created a whole world with a whole bunch of character who live within the plots and the setting provided by the novelist as God, and who is directing the plot. So the world of Dickens, the world of Hardy, the world of Virginia, the world of Jane Eyre, the world of let's say for instance William Makepeace Thackeray. So such kind of term cannot be employed when the novel begin its decline that is in the 20th century, as literary theorists, have us believe. For example, Leo Tolstoy, War and Peace, Franz Kafka, The Trial, Ernest Hemingway, The Sun Also Rises, James Joyce, Finnegan Wakes, Doris Lessing, The Golden Notebook. Please know all these are novels, but when we say we cannot employ a term like the world of Doris Lessing, we cannot. There's a slight restriction. So when we say the world of Dickens, we really mean, because the massive volume of the work, the character, the plot and the setting he has created, we can, sustainably employ such terms. Such terms are not possible to be employed for, Lessing or Vladimir Nabokov. Now the term for novel in most European languages is roman, which is derived from the medieval term, the romance. So the English name for the form, on the other hand, is derived from the Italian novella. Novella means a little new thing, which was a short tale in prose. So if you see in the 14th century Italy, there was a vogue for collection of such tales. Some serious, some scandalous. The best known of these collection is Boccaccio's Decameron. Boccaccio's Decameron, which is, widely available in English translation in any well-stored bookshop. Right. Then another kind of novel that I would like to introduce you is epistolary novel. So the credit for having written the first English novel or the novel of character goes to Samuel Richardson for his novel Pamela. Pamela is an epistolary novel. And Pamela is what is an epistolary novel? Which means a narrative that is conveyed entirely by the exchange of letters. So if a narrative is conveyed entirely by the exchange of letters, that is called epistolary novel. Another subclass of novel, and one of the most favorite of mine, is Bildungsroman. Bildungsroman or Erziehungsroman are German terms signifying the novel of formation or novel of education. So the subject of these novels is the development of the protagonist mind and the character as the novel progresses from beginning to the end, the passage from childhood through various experiences, and often through a spiritual crisis into maturity, which usually involves recognition of one's identity and role in the world. Bildungsroman is one of my favorite subclasses of novel from the German literature. So, for example, if you see Charlotte Bronte, Jane Eyre, published in 1847, is one such Bildungsroman. Somerset Maugham of Human Bondage is a personal favorite of mine, published in the year 1915. I have included it in a series of the greatest philosophical novels that I have done. Charles Dickens' Great Expectations, Thomas Mann, Magic Mountain. And then another important subtype of Bildungsroman is Kunstelsroman. Kunstelsroman means artist novel, which represent the growth of a novelist or other artist from childhood into the stage of maturity, that signalizes the recognition of protagonist artistic destiny or mastery of an artistic craft. For example, Marcel Proust's Remembrance of Things Past or James Joyce's A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man is one of my personal favorite. I have done a separate video on that. For example, if you see almost all the novels of Hermann Hesse is Bildungsroman, categorized in the special category of Kunstelsroman. The personal favorite of mine that I place at par with A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man is Hermann Hesse Demian. Demian is a Nietzschean is a Nietzschean growth, is a Jungian analysis of an evolution of a Nietzschean mind. So Peter Kamazin by Hermann Hesse, Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse is again Bildungsroman. If you see Narcissus and Goldmund by Hermann Hesse is again Bildungsroman. Roshalde is Bildungsroman. Andre Gide, The Counterfeiter, is Bildungsroman. Thomas Mann is again a master of Bildungsroman, especially his Tonio Kroger, published in the year 1903. Now let's come to see what is a drama. I hope all of you know what is a drama fairly well. But drama is technically defined as a form of composition designed for performance in theatre, in which actors take the role of character, perform the indicated action, and utter the written dialogue. So the common alternative for drama or dramatic composition is a play. In poetic drama, the dialogue is written in verse, which in English is usually blank verse. What is a short story as compared to novel? And remember, all these are fiction. We have still not delved into the non-fiction, please. So short story is a brief work of prose fiction, and most of the term for analyzing the component element, the type, and the narrative techniques of the novel are applicable to the short story as well. The short story differs from the anecdote, please mind it. In that, like novel, it organizes the action, thought, and dialogue of its character into an artful pattern of plot directed toward a particular effect on an audience. And as in the novel, the plot form it can be comic, it can be tragic, it can be romantic, it can be satiric. So the story is presented to us from one of the many available point of views. And it may be written in the mode of either fantasy or realism or naturalism, anything. Now, short story differs from the novel in the dimension that Aristotle called magnitude. And this limitation of length imposes difference between the effects that the story can achieve and in the choice and elaboration of the element to achieve those effects. Edgar Allan Poe, who is sometimes called the originator of the short story as an established genre, was at any rate its first critical theorist. He defines what he called the prose tale as a narrative which can be read in one sitting from half an hour to 2 hours and is limited to a certain unique or single effect to which every detail is subordinate. That is what Allan Poe says. So this is short story for you. Now comes folklore. So folklore, since the mid-19th century, has been the collective name applied to suggest verbal compositions and social rituals that have been handed down solely or at least primarily through the word of mouth and examples rather than written form. Folklore developed and continues now in communities where few, if any, people can read or write. It also continues to flourish amongst the literate population as well in the form of oral jokes, stories, and variety of word plays. So folklore can include legends, superstitions as well, songs, tales, proverbs, riddles, spells, and nursery rhyme. It can be about anything, weather, plant, animal, customary activities as birth, marriage, dance, traditional dance form. So, drama performed on holidays or at communal gathering. So, material from folklore have at all times been employed in sophisticated written literature. For example, the three caskets in Shakespeare's Merchant of Venice. Now, folklore can further be divided into folk drama. We have folk songs, we have folk tale, right? Now, let me introduce folk song, just a brief description. Folk song, for example, love songs, Christmas carol, walk songs, sea chanties, some kind of religious or drinking songs, children game songs, and many other type of lyrics are folk songs, as well as traditional ballad. So, folk tale strictly defined is a short narrative in the form of prose of unknown authorship, which has been transmitted orally. Another special mention is ode. John Keats is famous for writing odes. Ode to solitude, ode to the psyche, ode to the west wind, ode to the nightingale, ode to the Grecian urn, and such things. So, ode in its traditional application, ode denotes a long lyric poem that is serious in subject and treatment, elevated in style, elaborate in its stanzic structure. As Norman Maclean says, that the term now calls to mind a lyrics which is massive, public in its proclamation, and pindaric in its classic prototype is an ode. So the prototype was established by a Greek poet called Pindar, whose odes were modeled on the song by chorus in Greek drama. So ode is a highly elevated subject matter in treatment and elaborate in its stanzic structure. And ode are usually panegyric, encomiastic, heavy praises is there. Now another special category is fables or parable. So you see, a fable is a short narrative, in prose or verse that exemplifies an abstract moral thesis or principle of human behavior. Either the narrator or one of the character states the moral in the form of an epigram, which means explicitly stated moral in the form of epigram at the end of every fable is written. For example, Panchtantra is a fable. For example, Jatak Tales is a fable. For example, Aesop's fable is very famous. The most common is the beast fable, in which animals talk and act like human type they represent. Aesop's fable is one such. One of the most, well-received fable of our time is Animal Farm by George Orwell. So Animal Farm is a satire on the 20th century Stalinist Russia and a Russian totalitarian satire under Stalin in the mid-20th century. So fable in the Western culture derived mainly from the stories that were probably mistakenly attributed to Aesop, a Greek slave of the 6th century BC. Parable differs from fable. Parable is a very short narrative about human being presented so as to draw a tacit analogy or a parallel with a general thesis on the lesson that the narrator is trying to bring home is parable. A parable के मामले में कहते हैं कि Jesus Christ always spoke in terms of parable. For example, his terse parable of the fig tree mentioned in the Gospel of Luke is very famous, so you can read it. So yes, guys, I have elaborated various genres in fiction. Now let's come to non-fiction. So in non-fiction, I'll speak on two. One is essays and one is biography and autobiography. So essay, any short composition in prose that undertakes to discuss a matter, express a point of view, persuade us to accept a thesis on any subject, or simply entertain. So the essay differs from a treatise or a dissertation in its lack of pretension to be a systematic and complete exposition, and in being addressed to a general rather than a specialized audience. So when it is addressed to a specialized audience, it becomes a treatise or a dissertation. As a consequence, the essay discusses its subject in non-technical fashion, and often with a liberal use of devices such as anecdote, striking illustrations, and humor to augment its appeal. A useful distinction between formal and informal essay. The formal essay or article is relatively impersonal. The author writes as an authority or at least as highly knowledgeable and expounds the subject in an orderly way. So examples can be found in various scholarly journals. In the informal essay or familiar or the personal essays, the author assumes a tone of intimacy with his audience, tends to deal with everyday things rather than with public affairs or specialized topics, and write in a relaxed, self-revelatory and sometimes whimsical fashion. Modern example to be found, for example, if you can read the New Yorker, you can find many essays. Just as an example. Now the Greeks, going back to the ancient Greeks, Theophrastus, Plutarch, Cicero and Seneca wrote essays long before the genre was invented. What became its standard name, and the standard name was given by Montaigne, a French writer, somewhere around 1580s. So the title signifies attempt and was meant to indicate the tentative and unsystematic nature of, commentary on topics such as of illness, of sleeping. Then Francis Bacon comes, then Alexander Pope comes, and such writers. Now come to biographies, and the last one in this. So late in the 17th century, John Dryden defined biography as the history of particular men's lives. The name now connotes a relatively full account of a particular person's life, involving the attempt to set forth the character, temperament, milieu, as well as the subject's activities and experiences. And then we have, hagiographies. So hagiographies are panegyric biographies of revered and venerated men and women. For example, Mother Teresa, Mahatma Gandhi. We have hagiographies written by a Nobel Prize winner Rolla on the life of Vivekananda and Ramakrishna. We have biographies of Saint Augustine and Thomas Aquinas. So autobiography is a biography written by the subject about himself or herself. It is to be distinguished from memoirs, in which the emphasis is not on author's developing self, but on the people and event that the author has known or witnessed. And it differs from the private diary or journal, which is a day-to-day record of the event in one's life. So there are some remarkable journals as well. Wordsworth, remarkable journal written in the year somewhere around 1798 to 1828, but not long published until after his death. So guys, I hope I have explained you what is literature, what is fiction versus non-fiction, what are the various genres in fiction and what are the various genres in non-fiction. Do let me, do tell me on the comment section that how do you like this video. Happy reading. If you have still not liked, shared and subscribed my YouTube channel, arguably The Reading Quest, please do that. Thank you so much.